and I'm a deputy to General Convention, and I'm also vice chair of the Resolution Review Committee, and I'll get into what all that is about. Do you want to?
This is for me to walk around.
Oh, all right.
I was going to introduce you.
Go ahead. Now that I've done it.
Now that she's done it, you know, this is Nancy Cohen. She's not only a delegate, she's our vice chancellor. Deputy.
You're an alternate deputy.
I always get the word wrong. Yes, I do. I'm a second alternate, so I got out of going this year. I'll let Nancy explain all the changes that have gone on with what's going to happen and with convention and who's going and why not. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So she's also our diocesan vice chancellor, being the diocesan lawyer. She was chancellor for many, many years and then decided she'd had enough of that and stepped in to be vice. So I'm grateful that Nancy has come to spend make this presentation with us and to then stay for 10:30 service.
Right.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, and thank you for being here, folks. So this is our pre-convention discussion, and Tim G is coming sometime after convention to tell you what really happened. And so this is a little bit of what we're going to do today. The introduction, talk about resolutions. Resolutions is where I know most of the stuff. A little bit about the budget and the safety and COVID ramifications for this general convention. It's going to be in Baltimore, starting on this coming Friday, Baltimore, Maryland. And here are the people from El Camino who will be at General Convention, of course, our bishop. And they're not even going to allow the bishops to meet with their deputations this year. They have to be in a different section.
Presentation mode.
Go.
I don't know, Max.
What do you want to do, the slideshow?
Yeah.
Or?
Is it that?
All right. Whoops. Back to people. So there are clergy deputies and lay deputies, and as Robin just said, she is an alternate clergy deputy, but because of COVID restrictions, the number of people who can go to convention this year is greatly limited, and only the first alternates will be there in both the clergy and lay side of the deputations. So the first General Convention was in 1785, and the Reverend William White presided. And it was in Philadelphia, and at that convention they began work on our Constitution and a revision of the Book of Common Prayer. And within 10 years, General Convention had agreed on its form of governance, which is very much the bicameral, such as our own Congress, and that endures today. So there's the House of Bishops, and the elected bishops, rather than royally appointed as it started early on, all bishops of the Episcopal Church, both active and retired, are entitled to seat, voice, and vote in the House of Bishops. But for this convention, retired bishops are asked not to appear, just because there are too many people. Come on in. He's welcome. She's welcome. Each of the dioceses, including Convocation of Churches in Europe and the Episcopal Church in Navajo land, are entitled to elect 8 deputies, 4 lay, and 4 clergy. And the Reverend Gay Clark Jennings is president of the House of Deputies, and this convention will elect the next president. So this is a picture of what it used to look like on the floor. We have had, I think, 29% of the deputies say they will not be able to attend General Convention this year, most of them for COVID concerns. And there are legislative committees, and you can see how many. There are 24 legislative committees. Each of those takes the subject matter resolutions and reviews them and decides whether or not they should be advanced to convention, whether they should be amended, whether they want to write a substitute resolution. And some of the deputies from El Camino Real are on those committees. I'm on structure, governance, et cetera, et cetera. It has the longest name, I think. So this is a picture of the legislative process, but it's not showing up for you. It's very complicated anyway, and you wouldn't be able to see it. So the resolutions, there were 354 resolutions filed this year. The Resolution Review Committee, something is different here. I can't, it's not showing. See what I mean?
Does it work if you use these guys? Yeah,
You did this?
I did right.
Oh, all right. The Resolution Review Committee has reviewed all of those resolutions for conformity with the Constitution and canons, and also the polity of the church. That's mainly things like Book of Common Prayer, the way General Convention has managed in the past. In the past week, we reviewed all the amendments and substitutions for those. And the officers of Resolution Review will meet Tuesday morning. We have 7 resolutions where we're not too sure what's going to happen with those. And so we're going to discuss those Tuesday morning as to whether or not they should go back to the legislative committee before 6 o'clock Tuesday night, when the whole schedule for General Convention has to be finalized. And I've talked about the 24 resolutions. Also, the legislative committees hold hearings. And this year, all the hearings were held online, and the legislative committees met by Zoom to decide how they were going to manage the resolutions. So, some of the resolutions of interest. A125 is probably the most controversial. And it's a resolution, as the title, Extending and Furthering the Beloved Community. It was submitted by the presiding officer's working group on truth-telling, reckoning, and healing. And they propose a group outside of the usual Episcopal Church institutions to take from tech the annual income from over $43 million and manage those funds to make reparations for past racial injustices. And the reasoning in their resolution for taking this outside of the usual tech entities is the current corporate structure of the Episcopal Church, like other corporate structures in the United States, has been influenced and shaped by white supremacy. And in order to work toward racial change in our church and world, we need new structures to birth new possibilities. The resolution review issues with this resolution are not whether or not there should be reparations. It's that traditionally any resolution for funding is just for funding for the next triennium, and in this case, the next 2 years, because the convention should have been last year, and so there are only 2 years until the next convention. So this is very different in that they want money allocated now and in perpetuity for an unknown project. There are 2 committees to be established under the resolution that would decide what to do. And so how this is all going to sort out, I don't know. People want racial healing, but this is a little bit outside how General Convention usually manages its money. DO44, and please, if you have questions, just raise your hand anytime. DO44 is a companion resolution to A125. It calls for some funding in the triennium, and it talks a little bit about how one of those committees would operate. And then we have CO36, funding for the beloved community. This would put management of budget preparation under the Executive Council. Wait a minute, no, CO36 is part of the reparations and reconciliation, and again is another $2 million to be allocated for the continued implementation of additional work of organizing our efforts to respond to racial injustice and grow a beloved community of healers, justice makers, and reconcilers for implementation of the resolution. This one is a little more confined. It's past resolution review, so it's not an issue as far as that is. But AO48 is a resolution about how the convention budget is established. Right now, there's what we call PB&F, Program Budget and Finance Committee. They work with Executive Council. Executive Council explains to them at the beginning of the process all the programs and other funding necessities for the church. And PB&F goes off and they try and figure out the budget and how people propose different things before resolutions are even introduced. This has caused a lot of duplication of effort from the Finance Committee of Executive Council with PB&F. So this resolution proposes that Executive Council take over the management of the budget and that they can appoint task forces for individual pieces of it to get help from other people, but they wouldn't have to duplicate a lot of the things that they do. The people I've talked to on PB&F think this is a great idea. A lot of them would work on those task forces, but it would eliminate a lot of travel, a lot of extra meetings of people who have been extraneous to the process in the past. And so basically be much more efficient in the management. Robin.
What's PB&F again?
Disappear.
What was the initial?
As an entity.
What's the initial stand for?
Oh, I think it's Program, Budget, and Finance. I think that's PB&F, yeah.
And can you explain what the letters are at the beginning of each resolution number? Or did you already?
I've gone through those.
Yeah, what's an A mean? What's a D?
Oh,
a C?
there are A, B, C, and D resolutions. A resolutions come from a standing commission or the Executive Council. B, I thought I had a slide on that, but I don't see it here. B is from some other committees. D is the most, any deputy can file a D resolution as long as they get 2 other deputies to agree to co-sponsor the resolution. So we don't want just one person coming forth with a resolution. I mean, even with that, one of the resolutions is the Episcopal Church should provide an ophthalmologist for a town in Yemen. I have no idea why this is the responsibility of the Episcopal Church, but we do get resolutions like that. We get a lot of duplicate resolutions. I think there were 18 resolutions honoring or memorializing Barbara Harris, the Right Reverend Barbara Harris, who died in the past year. There are some that you just wonder why people even thought of this, and so that's why you have resolution review and legislative committees that go through these resolutions, so you don't have people trying to figure this out on the floor of convention. Does that help, Robin?
Wasn't B for resolutions proposed by the House of Bishops?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Was a B letter for resolutions that were
No,
proposed by the
some
House of Bishops?
resolutions are assigned either to the House of Bishops as the first review or the House of Deputies for the first review. So it has nothing to do with the lettering
Oh, okay.
of the resolutions. And then after, say, something originates in the House of Bishops, after they discern what should be done, it is moved to the House of Deputies, or vice versa. Okay? Next is A129. This has been amended quite a bit. It's no longer a forensic audit. A lot of resolutions were amended in the past week, so I haven't had a chance to change the wording of the slides. But basically, they want an audit, and they're not calling it an audit anymore because they didn't really understand what an audit is. But they want to know the historical and current racial injustices among dioceses and the whole Episcopal Church, and how the financial assets have been influential in those injustices. Well, as you can imagine, this is a monumental task. So the resolution is much narrower now. It's still going to be difficult, but it's not quite as onerous as the wording of the first resolution. D092, you might have heard in the news that once again, in this Lambeth conference, the Archbishop of Canterbury has excluded same-sex spouses from being invited to the Lambeth conference, which starts about a week and a half or 2 weeks after our General Convention in England. This happened at the last conference. The reasoning for both archbishops is that they are trying to maintain the Anglican communion. There are a number of bishops, mainly in Africa and a few other places, who cannot agree to same-sex clergy, never mind spouses of same-sex clergy. So same-sex or gay clergy or gay bishops are invited. And that's kind of the compromise, I guess. But this resolution pretty much is saying we want to express our dismay to the Archbishop of Canterbury over his decision not to invite spouses of same-sex bishops. At the last Lambeth conference, some spouses went and they weren't invited to any of the functions, but they made a presence there. I don't know what's going to happen at this one. And C028, once again, there is a resolution to change the Canon 117.7 that says communion is restricted to those who have been baptized. As you know, most Episcopal churches, especially on the coast, the east and west coast here, invite everybody to the table. But it is not part of our canons. And actually, the Diocese of Northern California sponsored this resolution. There are many theologians who are objecting to it, and so it will be discussed once again at General Convention. And then I think we're coming close to the end. Establishing a task force on the state of membership in the Episcopal Church. Again, this would be very complicated. They want to know a lot of detail among all the parishes, etc. The explanation said times have changed, people are raised in different denominations, they attend Episcopal churches, and no one asked them whether or not they've been baptized. And that those preparing parochial reports have no idea how to deal with filling in with how many baptized people you have and so forth. And that's probably true. How this is going to get sorted out, again, I don't know. Then, first of all, before I go to budget, which I don't know a whole lot about, But are there any questions about resolutions, which of course are the mainstay of all the decision-making at General Convention? We're going to start on Friday morning. We have sessions in the morning and in the afternoon and the evening to try and get through a lot of the resolutions. A great many resolutions will be put on the consent calendars. We're going to have consent calendar every one of the 4 deliberation days. Each legislative committee has been asked to put as many items on the consent calendar as they think do not need further discussion within General Convention. That said, a deputy can stand up and say, I want that resolution taken off the consent calendar so we can discuss it. So that could happen. But I don't know how many resolutions are on the consent calendar right now, but a great many. In 4 days instead of 10 days, there's no way there could have been discussion about all the resolutions. And legislative committees have also had the option of saying this should be deferred to the next convention because there isn't time to discuss all the parameters of this resolution. And so there were time frames set up, but also how important is it that this resolution be discussed at this convention rather than 2 years from now? Of course, we have to elect a new president and a vice president of the House of Deputies. That is going to happen at this convention. But among the resolutions, there are many, and the ones I've discussed will all, I think, be discussed in total at convention. But there are many that will just pass. I mean, some of them are like Title IV. I haven't even tried to discuss with you clergy discipline in Title IV. There are many, many canons in Title IV, and there are just very tiny, how do you do this and how do you do that within a complaint that is brought forth for a clergy person. And a lot of those, the Title IV committee can pass those on to the consent calendar. There usually isn't a great deal of discussion of those. The people who are expert in it on the legislative committee know how Title IV works, and so they are constantly trying to improve that process. So, anything else about resolutions you'd like to know? Okay. The budget. The budget is, for the next 2 years, but also probably some of this year, is $100.7 million. And the policy is to maintain no more than 25% of a 5-year average of expenses for short-term reserves. Now, that is something that most nonprofit corporations try to do. Most parishes should be doing it too. It usually ends up to be having in reserve about 2 months of your parish budget so that you have cash there. You know, the money that comes in goes up and down. Usually parishes find that the summer is kind of low on people who give. They are away, so if they give other than online, you're probably not getting money in as quickly. Any amount that is over that is divided 80% to trust funds and 20% for short-term reserves. There are surpluses from the pandemic, and a lot of places have found this because of the government funding of most corporations and others, and churches. There was extra money, actually, in many church budgets. But the challenge is the shortened amount of time to develop a budget and in the ability to hold hearings and to consider costs of resolutions passed by General Convention. Another advantage, by the way, of that AO 48 is that built into that is a mechanism for funding for projects that come up in General Convention, so that Executive Council can do that. They will have the authority to do that and to decide how much should be allocated to those projects after certain resolutions are passed at Convention. And the other challenge is the funding for the presiding bishop's working group on truth-telling, reconciliation, and healing. And this is where they wanted a percentage of the Episcopal Church financial holdings, which weren't really defined. What are the financial holdings? Certainly, I would hope it would not be, for instance, pension funds held by the church pension group and so forth. So, I think we can go to safety and COVID if it would come up. And it won't. What you did before, Robin, didn't play here. But,
Your schedule.
yeah, no, I won't say, there, okay. For this convention, again, I think I said that usually you have about 10 days. We're only going to have 4 legislative days. Everybody must test every morning, must test before we leave our homes, get on a plane and so forth. Everybody must wear N95 masks. They're going to be giving away tests at convention to everybody who is registered. Only bishops, deputies, first alternates, and essential staff. No exhibit hall, no public worship services, no deputy and diocesan dinners, no chancellor's dinner. The chancellors were so excited about setting up a dinner that they do at every convention until they were said, no, none of that. I am sure there will be informal gatherings. I mean, I don't think everyone, there are 800 some odd deputies, they're not all going to go out to dinner all by themselves, but at one point there was a plan to provide boxed breakfasts and lunches to every deputy, and everybody rose up in arms and said, forget it, that's too expensive. Some of us don't even eat breakfast. Don't do that. We'll manage our own meals. We've had to submit proof of vaccination and boosters, and there's an email that's supposed to come out on Tuesday about how we show that. There has been a terrific increase in the technical capabilities that have had to be instituted for this convention. And if we had known a year ago how much we were going to retract on convention, they might have been able to even have voting remotely. But it was 2 months ago that COVID cases started going up in Baltimore, which caused a lot of the safety precautions to be instituted, and it would be impossible to have voting, especially when some of them, you have the House of Bishops and you have the House of Deputies, and some are clergy and some are lay. So we're going to have to meet to do that voting. And that's why all these precautions. Again, wearing masks at all times and self-testing. And then the schedule. This is what the schedule used to look like, all those days, hearings and so forth. This is a draft of what it might look like now. It's just very different. And there are people who are working round the clock trying to make it work and to try and get done the things we really have to get done. So this is, if you want to sit at home and track what's going on, this is where you can go to do that, generalconvention.org. And the El Camino website. Carol Bartolini is our new communications director in the diocese. She has been asking deputies to send her information several times a day as to what's going on so that she can put it on the diocesan website and keep people informed about what is happening. And then there's a Facebook page for our diocese and Twitter. And all of the resolutions are in the virtual binder, vbinder.net. If you forget that, just go to General Convention Virtual Binder and it will come up. You can go look at resolutions by committee, by number, by various ways. It was all down this morning, but hopefully be up. Maybe they're doing fixes and figure people are in church on Sunday morning. I'm not sure, but another fellow on the Resolution Review Committee and I were both trying to get on this morning and we couldn't. But every other time I've tried to get on, it's been there. So that's a quick run-through of what's happening, or what we think will happen at General Convention. Do you have any other questions?
We have an online question. There's actually people online looking at
I
you.
can hear you easier if you're not on your microphone, or maybe if you get closer to me.
He turned it up so much it's harder to hear. So the online question is, if we have input we'd like to give regarding the resolutions, can we as parishioners do that? If so, how?
You can contact a deputy. I should tell you that deputies are, unlike delegates to our diocesan convention, who gather information from their parishes as to different resolutions, deputies to General Convention are charged with voting what they as an individual believe, given their experience in the church. So they're not gathering information in order to vote, but deputies are happy to hear from people as to opinions on resolutions. The easiest way might be to go to the diocesan website or to Carol Barlini, or I can give you my email if anybody wants to send information along.
Any other questions? Such an inquiring group.
Okay?
Okay,
Well, thank you, folks. If you think of things, let me know.
thank you, Nancy. The websites that she listed have been posted on our weekly e-newsletter, so you can access them then. General Convention is important. It's like the rest of us, we get tired of many people don't vote, when we all should be. But this is part of the church's governmental deciding on what we're going to be doing and how we are to be. And it looks very much like the U.S. government because they were both formed at about the same time. By the same people.
Yep, very much so.
So, thanks for coming. Thank you to Nancy for coming. Appreciate it very much. And 10:30 service will be outside. So we're doing in and out services during July. 8 o'clock is in, 10:30 is out. So we'll see you at 10:30 who wasn't here at 8. Great, thank you.
Good. Okay.
Guess it was a holiday week.
Yeah.